Presenting today, there will be two of us. Myself, my name's Julian Bedell. I'm the Director of Project Services. Essentially, my team provide the consulting and professional services that assist customers in evaluating and migrating to cloud services. Also joining me, I've got Peter Dodds. Peter Dodds is part of the architect team. He's going to be showing you some of the technical aspects and providing a demonstration of some of the technology that we use to enable this solution. So there you go, the first slide. There's no better way to start a presentation than the Dilbert cartoon. The essence behind this message here is that, and just sort of a précis of what's going on there, is that someone's migrating to the cloud, all their data centers moved entirely to a cloud environment, but they've lost the phone number of the cloud guys, and therefore vis-a-vis they've lost their data center. As crazy as that sounds, organizations have lost data centers as a result of migrating environments off to the cloud. A data center in the US only 2 years ago went offline, albeit only for 4 hours. So it's not an imperfect example of an organization that lost the level of control that they may have once had, perhaps through a lack of due diligence or perhaps through just misfortune. When we're talking about cloud, the key challenge that we sort of face is maintaining that control, and the thoughts around that control element have sort of gone away from the way they might have been in the traditional managed services environment. We often use an analogy around taking a taxi. If you're taking a taxi from one end of town to the other, you're outsourcing essentially. You don't want to drive the car, you don't want to own the car or maintain the car, but you do want control. You do want to be able to specify where you're going. You might want to specify specifically what the direction or the route you're going to take is going to be. And that's about control. You still want to maintain control, and the same applies to cloud. Whilst you want to outsource a large part of the infrastructure, there's still some key levers that you want to have control of. So that's what we're going to be discussing today, the core agenda. I'm going to talk a little bit about why we need cloud control and in the cloud environment. And then Pete's going to talk about how we do it, how we make it work, and then we're going to show you a demo of the technology that we have that enables this kind of functionality. So one of the first things that I've put here is some sample research data. A lot of this is specifically Australian data. The key message here is that the cloud is obviously becoming increasingly popular, increasingly present in the Australian market. And the Australian market is well known to be a leader worldwide of cloud adoption. The top left-hand corner there shows an example where we're seeing a 94% penetration. You see numbers pretty similar to that around cloud penetration amongst corporates and public organizations. You're also seeing, in the additional detail there, a large number of organizations are taking out a combined cloud strategy. So already 58% of organizations have adopted both public and private cloud solutions. On the top right-hand side, you're seeing growth, references here to growth in enterprise cloud, references to growth in hybrid cloud. And in the bottom left-hand corner there, this talks about organizations that were researched to measure their ability to actually move from public to private cloud. So already a large number of organizations, 30%, and what I believe is a relatively large number, have that ability to dynamically move workloads between a private and a public cloud. And then finally, in the bottom right-hand corner, the enterprise cloud strategy, how many organizations are seeing themselves have multiple clouds in the future, 74. So the gist of the message here is that there's two aspects to change in cloud. One is obviously becoming increasingly adopted, but it's people are adopting multiple forms of cloud. The second aspect of it is that there's increased complexity in the cloud solutions that are being provided. So already in Australia, the latest research that I saw said we had about 1,600 cloud providers just within Australia. Of course, Australian customers have access to global cloud provisions, so they can source their cloud providers from anywhere in the world. So there's a very wide-ranging number of suppliers, and there's a wide-ranging amount of complexity in the different solutions that organizations can be onboarding. In a more sort of simplistic view of some of the challenges organizations face, I've put together here some statements that we get from customers on a regular basis when we talk to them about their cloud requirements. One of the challenges they have is that they see a need to stop people creating random server instances. You might have heard of this term as shadow IT, but literally people within organizations taking their credit card and buying server instances on a cloud environment somewhere. And while sometimes that can be to the IT department, if it's within the organization, then it needs to be within the governance of the organization. And it's one of those things that may be irrelevant one day, but it becomes relevant as soon as you try and switch those server instances off. So managing to control that shadow IT is a challenge for a lot of our customers. Needing to move workloads from one cloud to another. Organizations either dissatisfied with their cloud provider and looking to move an entire environment off in a what you might call a big migration, or even we see trivial migrations where organizations just think they could move a small workload from one cloud to another just for commercial benefits, or perhaps to reach some additional feature capability. Pricing is an interesting one. People don't know how much their cloud is costing them. They're unable sometimes to analyze the bills they receive, which causes some challenges. And then the top right, where's the data need to be? Some of the data needs to be here in Australia. The data sovereignty challenges are quite common. A single point of management is another complaint that we often hear, and differentiating between which systems can be shared on a shared system, which can't be on a shared system. And sometimes those systems are dependent. So you have some component of a dependent environment that can be on a shared system, some component that can't. And a common one that we hear as well is that people need an interim or a plan B for their cloud strategy. So obviously a lot of organizations are moving to a cloud-first strategy, or even some organizations that we work with have 100% cloud strategy by a certain date. In between now and that date, there's obviously some transition work they're working through, and they need an interim position. But they're also nervous about that end state. They're nervous about putting all their eggs in one basket, and they're looking for a plan B, looking for an alternate who should they be in strife with the cloud provider they've got. That's just some of the challenges that some of our technology helps support. So here I've got 3 simple pillars, and I'll talk to these pillars in a bit more detail. These pillars essentially are the standard things that we look at when we provide managed services to customers. And you know, if you think back to the way organizations have managed outsourcing over the years, this stuff seems pretty standard. If you can imagine in the very large outsourcing that we saw some years back, where organizations essentially took large business processes or large aspects of their business and pushed them out to service providers, the real discussion would have been very much around commercials and governance, with a minimal discussion around technology, although a lot of investment around what the technology environment might be. And then we've sort of seen this transition to multi-sourcing, where smaller elements of the organization, perhaps more specific business processes, or perhaps specific departments or functions within an organization are being outsourced, but still relatively large outsources. People take a much more interested focus in technology, but there's still a significant play around the commercials and the governance. Now, cloud is really allowing us to outsource on a per workload basis. So it's almost micro-sourcing, if you like. the big play here, the most interested aspect of outsourcing these workloads tends to be technology. And actually, the conversations and the thinking around commercials and governance we find is often underbaked to quite some degree. Sort of is an aspect that can cause risk. So whenever we look at cloud design, we continue to bring in these three components into play. And quickly, I'm going to go through these three components in a bit more detail, and then I'll hand over to Pete, who will give you a bit more on the technology side that brings us to enable this. So if you look at the technology, aligning your workloads to the right place can be very dependent on the technology environment that you're in, and it has a large impact on the conversations we have with the customer. It's one of the most significant aspects of helping a customer identify what is a workload and where that workload should sit. Some of the things that I've mentioned here are platform support. Platform support is pretty key. The range of platforms that you can support on different types of cloud isn't unlimited. And as people start wanting to move mid-range systems onto cloud, they're starting to look for enterprise Unix type environments. We, for example, provide Solaris as a service, which you could regard as a niche type cloud offering. Dependencies, I probably would loop together application dependencies and latency in the same conversation. The location, the physical location you can have for different aspects of your stack is very dependent on how those applications and systems talk to each other and its tolerance to latency. A good example of this is we did have a customer wanting to essentially outsource their storage. They decided that was the workload they wanted to move outside, and they wanted to outsource to storage as a service. Unfortunately, there wasn't scope to actually provide that service within the data center that the servers were being supplied, because that server data center was outsourced. So you had limitations there. It just was a storage as a service offering outside of the physical location where the systems were in many cases, because of the application system dependencies and the latency tolerance. Other things that are very specific, a lot of solutions, enterprise solutions, we're starting to see clustering solutions come out into some of the larger public cloud providers, but some customers have very specific clustering solutions that may or may not sit nicely in a typical general public cloud, may need a more customized solution or even perhaps a private cloud solution. Licensing, a lot of large public cloud providers provide BYO licensing. Some ISVs really don't have a licensing model at all for cloud, and that's something that we've helped a number of ISVs out with. Some licensing is just problematic in the cloud. Windows desktop environments typically require a dedicated machine, and that presents challenges with can we put it onto a shared infrastructure or can we not? That often says, again, we need some sort of hybrid cloud model to support the various licensing solutions that we have. And finally, the extended effort to refactor the transition period, again, a technology requirements because of technology limitations in moving to cloud. People have looked for hybrid type solutions. On the commercial side of things, working out the commercials is often a challenge, and it's not always about cost, but one of the most important things is elasticity of the environment. So how much is likely to scale up or down, and the scalability or the scalability requirements of the environment can play a significant effect on how cost effective different cloud providers are. Obviously, the large public cloud providers play on the fact that they can provide a great amount of elasticity for a short amount of time, which actually gives you huge savings financially as far as not having to purchase that infrastructure or have any capital investment on that infrastructure. And that's really where cloud pays off. But a lot of organizations don't have highly elastic compute in their environment. Most of the organizations have a pretty boring utilization that rolls on the same quantity year on year throughout the year. So it doesn't have the same commercial attraction. Another thing that has proven a challenge to customers is the elastic pricing. So not only the fact that the pricing can change quite considerably between different cloud providers, but also that you're not going to have surety around your budget for the year ahead. You basically are signing up to an IT environment with an elastic budget, and some organisations are challenged with that, where they've had previously a very fixed budget. Storage and outbound data are two things that drastically impact in some environments can drastically impact your pricing. And outbound data charges is always a classic example where changes in the amount of outbound data have caused huge bills to come through, which weren't being monitored or the customer wasn't aware of. An ability to auto scale. Again, if you don't have control over your autos, that can cause problems with your commercials. And finally, the governance element. Governance is probably the most overlooked element of signing up to cloud. And some of the things to think about in governance are quite critical. I'll start in the top left-hand corner around data location. That's probably one of the things that's hardest for moving to a public cloud is where is my data located? You might only get down to a region sometimes, or you might even get down to a country, which is useful. You might not know the data center. You certainly won't know whereabouts it sits in that data center. Some customers want to know where the rack is. They want to be able to put a camera on that rack and see the physical systems. That doesn't apply to a lot of cloud environments, so that's the balance that you have to make. Another thing about data location and sovereignty is the need for sovereignty is a bit of a grey subject matter at the moment. If I place it in Australia, do I have data sovereignty? Am I able to control that data? You would assume yes, but at the moment there's a very critical case being tested between the US and Ireland, where a judge in the US over a narcotics case has basically asked for emails from a Microsoft cloud environment that is physically located in Ireland, in Dublin. And that judge has ordered those emails to be released to the US. And that's going to be a classic critical case that shows what the limitations of transport of data flow is and where the jurisdictions can lie. Obviously, the implications of Microsoft giving up this data to the US-headed organization, no matter what country they're in, the US potentially has rights to access the data that sits in those DCs. Now, that's yet to be tested, but that can present some challenges for customers that have very serious requirements around ensuring that the data is sovereign in Australia. We talked about shadow IT earlier on, governing that shadow IT, controlling not only the amount of spend, but the suppliers that you're using, the cloud providers that you're using is a challenge, and also controlling or overlaying policies and governance onto that shadow IT is a challenge. SLA requirements is an interesting one. Most public cloud providers don't provide an SLA. In fact, the example I gave at the beginning of the outage where the data center was lost for 4 hours did not break any SLAs. So it's something that has to be thought of. Certainly in cloud environments that we provide or private cloud environments, SLAs are a normal fact of life. To the extent that we're looking to help customers extend SLAs across to public cloud environments, should it be something where we can manage the associated risk with the availability in that environment. Contract terms, people may not realize, but typically large public cloud providers' contract terms are very favorable to the supplier. Some customers just absolutely have to have their terms or are not able to accept the risk associated with the terms of the provider. So customized terms in itself can dictate in some ways where your workload should sit. Security of environments, physical security of the data center environment, and the security and the depth of security and capability of that environment something that needs to be considered. But also the policies that overlap that security. What's the policies that are overlaid on that specific cloud? And the other challenge that organisations typically have is overlaying a single policy over multiple cloud providers, and ensuring that there's consistency in data management, in security compliance across multiple cloud providers is one of the most common challenges that organisations see. So finally, when we look at cloud brokerage, we look at these three pillars in a bit more detail. These are typical features that people are looking to tick off, and on the technology space, the kind of technology features they like to have are portability, the ability to have a service catalogue, a bespoke menu of services that points to different cloud providers, the ability to leverage the elasticity of the environment through cloud bursting, and have a single view of management through a single pane of management, and broad cloud integration with the technology. On the commercial side, they're looking for pricing analysis, supplier standards, management of suppliers, a rules-based catalogue which can specify through the service catalogue who the supplier will be, segregation on pricing and on functionality between line of business, and ability as well to quickly place workloads as to basically place workloads where it's financially most beneficial. And from a governance perspective, they're looking for environments that fit their regulatory requirements, a common set of policies across their cloud, security standards, again, that are common across their cloud environment, data sovereignty that means something that aligns well to their environment, and essentially service delivery management, some layer of management around that cloud that actually is supporting escalations, perhaps supporting performance management around that environment as you would typically in a managed service world. So now thanks for your time on that section. I'll leave questions for now, but I'll pass over to Pete. If you do have any questions, there's the box in the bottom right-hand corner there. Just throw your questions in there and we'll try to address them as and when they come up. Pete, over to you.
Thanks. Thank you, Julian. Good morning, everybody. What I'm going to take you through just a couple of comments on hybrid IT, how to actually move to hybrid IT, a little bit on what Julian was talking about in regards to governance control, managing shadow IT spend, and then we'll do just a quick demo on NTT's cloud control product on how we can actually show some examples of what you can do to use that technology to actually analyse and control those various IT functions. So what we've got here on this page is just showing what a traditional IT infrastructure might look like, where you've got your old, as we're calling them, heritage applications. You might have your own private clouds on site using various like Office 365, Salesforce. And then you might also have test and dev on some public clouds like Azure or AWS. And so what you find as an IT manager is that you've got various issues around security threats because you've got credentials being shared. There's no single point of management for authentication. Out of control costs. You might have a marketing department using a SaaS-based service on a credit card. You might have the sales managers decide to add on extra services in Salesforce, which you can't see happening, and they might be also spending per user and just putting on new users without your knowledge. And then you also have an issue around performance because of these uncontrolled services, you can't actually control how those users are getting and the speed of it. If they're using extra internet bandwidth and it's outside of your projected usage, you might find that you're upgrading links and again causing yourself more cost in the business. So what we call a hybrid IT is what we say there is a federated organisation where you have all of your common management framework. So what this enables you to do is to basically deploy out to your customers at a faster rate, have them utilize those services more efficiently, which creates performance and speed, consolidate all your costs together to make it a more cost-effective solution, using a single sign-on or a federated Active Directory structure or similar, means that you can control the security to all those internal and external environments and lower your risk. So your risk of outages, your risk of outages and complaints from your users lowers too if you're managing that effectively. So with Cloud Control, what we look at is actually offering a list of services through a customized catalog. So you might take a public environment like AWS, and that's got maybe 200, 250 different features you can give your users. You might give them only a small subset of those 250 features, so maybe just creating certain AWS instances, maybe give them access to Glacier storage. And then you can also you might have a private cloud inside your data center, or you might be using an enterprise-grade hybrid cloud in another data center under management. And you can give your users access to catalog items to create their own virtual machines. The developers might have an environment on a low performance environment just for doing testing, and they can turn that on, turn it off whenever they want, just by ordering it from a service catalog. To see exactly what is going on in the system at a moment's notice, we have a dashboard view, which I'll show later, and that dashboard, the administrators of the organisation might want to see how many virtual machines are up and running at any one time, or how many new virtual machines have been created in the last 24 hours, or even what orphaned machines or what shadow machines have been created that are outside the management scope. So there could be a system that runs once a day or once an hour, depending on what the business needs are, and you can actually start analysing what systems are put in place outside of the Cloud Control scope, and the Cloud Control can pick it up and say, hey, I found these new systems, we should put these under management. So what we've got a couple of things at the bottom there. We've got smart state analysis, which is basically a way of actually securing virtual machines on VMware and doing things. What that would actually lead into, it would be into a policy engine where you could actually maybe have a web server that has 3 logins. So 3 system users for running the website. If, for instance, a 4th user tries to log in, it could detect that as a threat and shut that machine down because of an admin control as may be lost on that box, or it could actually alert an administrator to say there's something going on there. So what we've got here, this is just an overview. I'll actually go into the demo, but the Cloud at a glance basically can show you details of virtual machines, like what container it's running in, which is, for this example here, it says VMware OS, where exactly it's running, so which cloud environment it's running. And then down the bottom there, we've just got an example of a catalog where this user can order an AWS instance, Elastic Load Balancer, or some local CentOS and Red Hat environments. So with that type of structure, it means that instead of actually being an IT department that says no to its users, or basically having to go through a manual system of governance, instead you can actually open the IT service out to users and say, hey, here's what you can do. Here's your bucket of resources that you can use, and then your users can actually use that at how they see fit, and you don't have to worry about anything in regards to that cost or security and other governance issues. So for what we've done, we've combined a number of technologies together to actually create our CloudForms product. It's based on Red Hat CloudForms. For network security, we actually have enlisted VMware to use their NSX gateway product to underpin our network underneath all of our clouds publicly and under the CloudForms product. For single sign-on and two-factor authentication, we use CA's CloudMinder product. What we've found is we've had a lot of success in rolling that out to organisations who want to actually not only just federate their AD structure to actually have a single sign-on service, but to actually put a level of security around that as well in regards to where people can log on to. So you might have a user who then all of a sudden the login pops up from Japan, and so the system might turn around and say, hey, that looks a bit suspicious. You know, how can he be in Japan? So it can actually restrict onto that. And then we've got some technologies around there. We use multiple storage vendors for slow and fast storage, and again, backup through Commvault, and we visual switching with Juniper and Arista. One of the products in there that you see there is Puppet Labs. Now, we do things slightly differently at NTT. Not only can we automate virtual machine templates and VMware vApps, but we also like to be able to make sure we can actually automate our builds internally inside those VMs. And so that's where Puppets come in handy too. So if anyone has any questions about Puppet, we'll certainly take that and give you some more details about it. So a way to describe visually, to a certain extent, what cloud control is. You can see an example there. We've got AWS public cloud. So that would actually, obviously, we can put Azure under there. We can put Rackspace and a few other public cloud vendors. We have our own secure cloud environments, which are either single tenant or multi-tenant, and that obviously runs VMware and VMware NSX. And then we have our bespoke solutions for certain customers. So they're either running VMware or Red Hat as a hypervisor, or they do connectivity into the Cloud Control Engine via OpenStack. So what we find is we can actually give customers basically the best of a secure private environment in our data center or in their data center, and the ability to burst and put additional resources into various other semi-public and public cloud solutions. I'll just give you a quick, quick and dirty solution examples. What we've got here is what we call our public cloud environment. Basically, it's an enterprise-grade solution that where customers have their own dedicated data stores. They have a dedicated resource pool which isn't shared by any other customer, but it's multi-tenanted on shared hypervisors. That type of solution I'll show you shortly is actually part of the example. This example shows a customer who has an Exadata sitting out in our data center. Now we're actually multi-tenanting that database as a service product. They also have a private cloud environment where every single hypervisor is dedicated to them, and they have some dedicated storage, so their own NetApp solution, and their security and networking is all dedicated to them as well. But in certain peak times, in this solution, they need to have additional resources for e-commerce, and so what they do is they take out extra services out of our public cloud environment, and that's where they run their web shop for things like Christmas sales, Mother's Day, Boxing Day, that type of workload. And when that workload's over, so January sales is over, they then basically turn off that environment and don't incur any cost. And the last example it's similar to that second one, but this customer example, they actually have physical servers like co-located with us to run transactional foreign exchange. And they then run some back office services out of a multi-tenant platform, our public cloud environment, which is running in our Melbourne data center. But also when they do actually have to have a front end for peak load for running their online web part of it, they're actually using CloudFront and Amazon for basically accelerating that web front end and then storing temporary data into S3. So those three examples is some of the things you can do in CloudForms and our Cloud Control product, and we'll just show you now exactly how we can do it. So just before I do that, I just might go through what we're planning on doing. We currently support HP hardware and any x86 hardware. We're actually moving that to support Spark as well, as Julian touched on with Solaris as a service, bringing that under management. I think it's every third or fourth day, if you subscribe to the AWS developer blogs, they're bringing out new features and changes to their API twice a week at least. And so we're basically seeing that development work, and as their features come on board, we're rolling those out into the CloudForms product. When we went live with this product, Oracle was only just bringing out an OpenStack-enabled environment into Oracle Enterprise Linux, and so OVM-based hypervisors will be available shortly. Again, as I was talking about with Puppet, scripting a whole bunch of new features into cloud deployments is something that we've been working on, and we'll be rolling that out as well. So it's that one there is basically what we see is a way to actually enable customer and IT shops to actually reduce the amount of workload that their users have by being able to roll out like a whole development environment or a whole production environment with a couple of clicks of the mouse. Managed services plugins. Now, the amount, as you'll see in the demo, the amount of different reporting and tasks you can actually do in Cloud Control is a lot, and so we only show a small subset. So as those additional management items come on board, like automating backups through CloudForms or doing security checks regarding patching and vulnerability scanning, and those type of plugins, click of the mouse type functionality, and we'll bring those into the product as they come on board. And of course, more cloud providers. As Julian said again, there's a lot of cloud providers in Australia. There's a lot worldwide. Obviously, the major players have their own APIs set, but what we're noticing is a lot of people are supporting OpenStack, and as those cloud providers move to a shared API stack, we can bring those into the product. So I'll just switch over now to the demo environment, and we'll go through it from here. So this is what we call our dashboard. On here, you can see basically for this example, there's 3 instances running in Amazon. We've got a couple of Red Hat instances here, and there's a Microsoft Windows server sitting in an infrastructure environment. So previously, I did talk about we were using services and a service catalog functionality, and I'll just go through that and actually bring it up for you now. Hold on one moment. So here we have the Explorer window, and we can see that there's a list of services available. So what we've got here is we can see basically there's those from the front screen. We've got some virtual machines here on AWS, and then we've got some virtual machines running in our cloud environment. So if we were to order a new system, let's just check the catalog. Right, so on the right-hand side here, we've got an orders button. So let's order an Amazon EC2 instance. So it's quite simple. It's like a simplified version of the Amazon interface. So we can give it a name, CD demo 1. We can choose where we'd like to put it. So we'll put it in the secondary site in Australia. We have a virtual private cloud from Amazon here to put it in, and we'll put it on the back end network. And we've got one security group to surround all the machines. We won't worry about some external IP addresses. It's just testing, and we'll choose one of their Linux instances, and we'll make it a micro so we don't spend too much money. All right, so now we just submit it, and it goes away and builds. What we can see there is basically it's just telling us there that we've actually put the request in, and it's actually going away and doing it. So if I just bring up the list, we can see there that it's pending. It's going to creating it. So we'll let that go. So the other one we could have requested was a virtual machine running on infrastructure. So infrastructure could be a public cloud environment managed by NTT, or it could be a private cloud infrastructure managed by NTT. So if I just go in here, and I can actually show you here, so we've got three instances running here, one of them being basically like a demo CentOS box. And on this screen here, we can actually see its name, where it's running, its platform, and whether it's powered on, powered off. You can do basic control here as well, so we can, up the top here, we can power them on, power them off, basically, obviously, because if you're paying per minute, you want to be able to control that cost. You can bring on a console to have a look at the machines, and you can also do things like adding more resources like disk, or change the configuration to add more RAM and CPU. So that's all fine. That just shows your ability to create environments for your users. But when we talk about control, we're talking about controlling and viewing what your users are doing. So that's what we have over here is our cloud intelligence. So I'll give you an example of cost control is a chargeback report. So every single part of that resource pool and those resources that we created has a charge attached to it in the back end. So what we can do is we can actually have a look at a chargeback report here, which is one I've just run yesterday as an example. And we can see there that this DNS server here cost us $12.90. This demo Linux box, I mean, I put it up yesterday, it's cost us 21 cents. And obviously this test server has been turned off, and it's cost us $0 because it's been turned off. So that type of granular control can actually help us actually see what we're doing and what our customers are doing. And the good thing about the CloudForms product is that it comes pre-built with a whole bunch of reports regarding controlling your VM sprawl, looking at your provisioning processes around who has actually been provisioning servers. And also you can do analysis regarding trends. So if you find that you're using up more and more resources on in-house to the point where you're hitting your ceilings on RAM or CPU, you can actually have a look in the trending reports and actually see what's going on in your own environments. So probably a lot more that we can go through here, but I do understand that we only booked an hour for this. So if anyone has any questions, send them through now. I'm just going to run through a couple other reports. But if you do want to ask Julian a question on myself, just let us know now in the questions screen. So I'll just show you a couple more reports. Let's see if we can bring up a provisioning report, and we'll see who's been making some provisioning requests. So we go to VM, provisioning by VM. And we queue it up, and that's how we actually see the report. So we're queuing there, it runs the report, we let it run, and then we'll see in a couple of minutes that it's finished. And there we can see that basically that when the machines were created, that one was created on the 4th of May. You can see that one's created on the 24th of Feb, and so forth. So from there, you can actually then basically go back to the users who have created them. You can check, see what's going on, and you can, if need be, you can assign a cost to it, so you can then run through a cost analysis and see where you can save money. Okay, that's about it from us. I'll hand back to Julian. He can close the webinar up. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Pete. I'll just flick back to the presentation. Just to summarise, these are probably the three key takeaways from that presentation. Keep into account those three aspects of design, that technology, the commercial, the governance. It's especially important, or as important in a cloud environment as it is in really any managed services world. Try and gain some unification of control. Have a common control interface, common control policies, common control standards, instead of juggling a variety of different stuff for your environment. And balance balance this with a balanced, open and proven architecture. That's been our focus here, really, has been to use leading technology, but still make sure we're using technology and brands and capability that is synonymous with reliability and performance. So we've got a couple of questions here. What's the deployment model for cloud control? Is this offered as a SaaS service?
I'll answer that one. So what we're rolling out is NTT has legacy customers who have private clouds in the data center, and some with public cloud environments on other tool sets and web portals that we use to manage. We are rolling that out to those customers as a way of actually viewing as a SaaS product. Yes, it's actually something that we're looking at doing. Obviously, our preference is to manage environments in our data center to do that. But the modular aspect of it meant that we actually don't need access to servers or environments anymore. We can do it over links and IPsec VPNs. So yes, it is actually something we're looking at offering out to customers for their on-premise solutions as well, so they can actually see what's happening on-premise.
Okay, thanks. And there's another question here. For AWS instances that are deployed and managed through cloud control, what would the level of reporting be the same as instances perhaps that were deployed through private cloud or public cloud, NTT public cloud?
So without actually saying yes and no, the answer is yes, the data is actually there in AWS. You can actually retrieve the data. It's a matter of actually deciphering it and making use of it. So, and that's where Red Hat Platforms is beneficial, because it's taking that raw data and producing a report that's understandable. And so that's where we see the advantage over running all your administration straight through the AWS. So to answer, I think the reports are better because it's more visual than just actually having the raw data there. I think that's one of the complaints I've had from customers regarding the amount of information they get out of AWS. Some of those guys get 10,000 long record bills regarding what they've used, and they just can't marry it up. It's just line items of sort of like serial numbers and the cost associated with each of those, and they can't map it back to what virtual machines or what instances they're running. So they use a product such as this to actually go, right, we can see the serial number there, we can see how much it's used, and we know that is this database server or this web server or this load balancer. So it's better. It is actually a lot easier to actually utilize this instead of the AWS interface.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. We'll wrap it up there. For anyone looking for more information about NTT ICT or more information about some of the solutions we have around cloud, then please visit our website, nttict.com.